The stars never looked the same after what happened on Daymark. At first, it was just another deep space relay blackout, common out on the edge colonies, where solar storms and distance sometimes played tricks on communication lines. But then the silence stretched into days, then weeks. When a civilian freighter rerouted to check in on the colony, they didn't find static. They found nothing. No buildings, no people, no air. Just a cratered husk where a thriving human outpost had once stood. The video feed was grainy and cut, in and out, but what it showed was enough to bring Earth's assembly of nations to silence for the first time in decades. Where Daymark colony had glowed with life, shops, homes, schools, families, now there was only scorched soil and glassed terrain, as if the planet itself had been flash-burned by something far more advanced than anything humanity had ever faced. Whoever had done this hadn't just attacked a colony, they'd erased it. The official count was over 312,000 lives lost, most of them civilians, children, elders, farmers, engineers. Daymark wasn't a military hub. It wasn't even considered strategic. And that's what scared everyone the most. Whoever did this wasn't sending a message. They were testing us, and humanity did not take the test lightly. What came next would change the course of galactic history. Within 72 hours of confirmation, the United Terran Defense Accord activated the Archangel Protocol, an emergency defense initiative only ever theorized. Massive shipyards hidden in the shadows of Saturn and Uranus lit up like Christmas, launching warships long kept in reserve. Thousands, tens of thousands. Eventually, over 700,000 vessels moved into position across known space. Every captain, every fleet, every drone pilot. Humanity wasn't just angry, they were united. And at the center of this unstoppable force stood someone the news never mentioned, not at first anyway. His name was Elijah Reed, 17 years old, quiet, thoughtful. A high school senior from West Baltimore with dreams of becoming a musician, not a soldier, not a leader. Just a kid on a crowded subway train who saw a tired pregnant woman step on, clutching her back, swaying a little as she held the pole. Without hesitation, Elijah stood up and offered her his seat. She looked startled, at first, then grateful. She smiled, sat down with a slow breath, and said, "You didn't have to do that." Elijah just nodded, pulled his backpack tighter, and leaned against the train wall. As they rode, the woman watched him, observed how he pulled out a folded sheet of music, tapping a pencil softly to an invisible beat. When the train reached her stop, she stood, slowly, and handed him a small, sealed envelope. He blinked. "What's this?" "Just something I think you need to see," she said. "But don't open it until tonight." And then she was gone. That envelope would change his life. Inside, Elijah would find instructions, coordinates, a code only his fingerprints could unlock, and a message, one that would tie him directly to the mystery behind the destruction of Daymark, the mobilization of 700,000 warships, and a secret so old and buried it had been scrubbed from every public record for over 100 years. Because the war humanity was preparing to fight wasn't the first one. And Elijah, he was part of the reason the last one ended. Now, deep beneath the city in a forgotten Cold War-era bunker turned data vault, intelligence officers stared at a decrypted file tied to Elijah Reed's DNA. His name was flashing on terminals that hadn't lit up in decades. Warning lights blinked red. Automated security systems long dormant came back to life. Somewhere, in a council chamber on Europa, an old man whispered, "God help us. They've activated the legacy protocol." The stars above Earth were quiet for now, but every admiral, every planetary defense officer, and every intelligence agent knew the silence wouldn't last. Whoever destroyed Daymark hadn't just declared war. They'd awakened something old, something watching, and one boy, with nothing but a note, a melody, and a past even he didn't know, had just stepped onto a path that could either save humanity or end it. But what did that note say? And why had it been waiting for him? You'll want to hear the rest. Because this is only the beginning. The envelope sat on Elijah's desk like it didn't belong there. He'd stared at it for hours after school, the edges worn now from him picking, get up and setting it back down. No name, no return address. Just his own curiosity gnawing away at him like a slow leak in a dam. When the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to flicker on across the block, Elijah finally cracked the seal. The paper inside was smooth, thick, too fancy for something you'd buy at the corner store. The handwriting was clean and elegant, like it belonged to someone from a different era. There was only one line at the top. Your music is a key. Beneath it, a string of numbers and letters. At first glance, it looked like gibberish, just another code. But something about the way the characters were spaced tugged at his brain. He'd seen patterns like this before, not in any classroom or textbook, but on the interface of his old beat pad, when he used to layer melodies over encrypted loops to keep them safe from being copied. It hit him all at once. This wasn't just a message, it was encrypted audio. He opened his laptop, hands moving fast, eyes darting between the code and his screen. It took him the better part of an hour, but once he aligned the tempo markers and fed the sequence into his DAW, digital audio workstation, the waveform bloomed across the screen, a soft, pulsing tone. Low, steady, mechanical. Then a voice, old, weathered, female, Elijah Reed. If you're hearing this, the line held, and that means it's your turn now. He froze. Long ago, before the Accord, before the colonies, before the chartered fleets, there was a war. The voice continued. Not a war of planets, a war of minds, of species, and of silence. Elijah leaned in, the hairs on his arms, rising as the voice went on. We won that war, barely. But we didn't destroy them. We only forced them to retreat, to wait. We knew they would come back. We hid what we knew, hid it in people, in blood, in music, in memory. A beat of silence. Then, you carry part of that memory, and now they're back. He sat there for a long time, just breathing. The voice faded, but the sound of it, her voice, echoed in his ears, like it had spoken something deeper than words. And there was something else buried in that file. Another layer. He could feel it, like a track that hadn't been unmuted yet. But he didn't have the tools to unlock it. Not here. So Elijah did what he always did when the world felt too big. He grabbed his headphones, zipped up his hoodie, and walked. The city was alive, loud, buses groaning at intersections, people shouting down sidewalks, food carts puffing out steam and spice. He ducked into his favorite corner shop, waved at the guy behind the register, and bought himself a soda, like nothing had changed. But everything had. Across the city, far beneath the surface, someone else had been watching the code move. Lieutenant Mara Jin of United Terran Intelligence stood in front of a hollow screen the size of a garage door. She didn't blink as the waveform from Elijah's laptop scrolled across the projection. How long has it been live? She asked, voice sharp. 5 hours. Signal originated from Baltimore. We traced it to a private network node. Likely residential, her assistant said. And you're sure it's the real sequence? No question. It matches the original fallback encoding. It's the kind of thing you can't fake. Not unless you knew the legacy keys. Mara turned away from the screen, the weight of it all settling onto her shoulders. Then he really is the last carrier. Her assistant frowned. He's a kid. Doesn't matter, she said. If that file activated, he's in it now whether he likes it or not. Get a transport ready. We're going to Earth. Back in his room, Elijah was packing. Not because he understood what was going on, but because something deep in his gut told him he had to move. The kind of instinct that felt older than language. Like when you're being watched, like when a storm is about to hit and the birds go quiet. He only packed what mattered, his beat pad, the envelope, his backup drive, and the necklace his mom gave him when he was 10. A silver pendant shaped like a key, though she never told him what it opened. Just before midnight, his door creaked open. Elijah? His mom's voice, soft but tired. Yeah, Ma? You okay? You've been real quiet. He looked at her. Wanted to tell her everything. about the voice, the message, the way the stars outside his window looked different now, like they were watching back. Instead, he said, "Just working on a song." She smiled faintly, nodding. "You always were good at hearing things no one else could." When she closed the door, Elijah looked down at the pendant, then back at the screen. The message wasn't just for him. It was a warning, and far beyond. Earth's orbit in the black silence between stars, something was already moving. They weren't ships. Not exactly. They moved like shadows, bending light, warping gravity. Silent, impossible. And they had no need for diplomacy. These weren't conquerors. They were cleansers, machines of thought and hunger, returning to finish what they'd started when humans were barely learning to walk upright. And humanity, with all its might and its 700,000 warships, still didn't understand who, or what, it was about to fight. But Elijah? He was starting to, and the song inside his head, the one he'd heard since he was 5 years old and never told anyone about, was getting louder, like it had been waiting all this time for someone to finally listen, somewhere, deep in the core, systems of a long-dormant Terran defense satellite. The song triggered a chain reaction. Lights flickered, engines ignited, and a name appeared on the ancient screen. Read. Elijah. Clearance accepted. The old machine began to hum. War was coming, and the first note had just been played.